March 3rd, 2026, 2:40 a.m. Somewhere in the Pacific, a U.S. Navy destroyer nearly missed a threat that should have been impossible to ignore. And it did not happen because of a system failure. On paper, everything was working. Radar online, weapons ready, every layer of defense active. The kind of system designed to make surprise almost impossible. But the crew behind those systems had been running on less than 4 hours of sleep for 3 consecutive days, and at that exact moment, one delayed reaction was enough to create a gap. To them, it was just another quiet watch cycle. Nothing unusual, nothing urgent, the kind of routine that repeats until it becomes invisible. Then a radar flicker appeared for less than a second and disappeared just as quickly. Something small, something easy to ignore. What they didn't know was that in less than 10 seconds, that single moment could either pass unnoticed or become the first sign of something much larger already beginning to unfold. Because on a modern warship, the system does not fail first. The people do. On a U.S. Navy warship, nothing is supposed to depend on a single moment like that. Every system is layered, every process has redundancy, and every watch is backed by another team ready to step in if something goes wrong. On paper, failure should be extremely difficult to reach. But life at sea does not follow paper conditions. A destroyer does not slow down because the crew is tired. Operations run continuously, sensors scanning, communications flowing, aircraft moving, and every department maintaining its own cycle without pause. Over time, the pressure does not come from one event. It builds quietly through repetition. A standard rotation might look manageable at first. A few hours on watch, a few hours off, time to rest and reset. But in reality, that balance rarely holds. Drills extend longer than planned, equipment needs attention, unexpected tasks appear, and rest becomes fragmented. What should have been 8 hours of recovery turns into short intervals of interrupted sleep. This is where the real problem begins. Fatigue does not shut systems down. It slows decisions. It delays recognition. It creates moments where something is seen but not fully processed. And on a battlefield where timing is measured in seconds, that delay is enough to change the outcome. The radar flicker was not the failure. It was the signal that something behind the system was already weakening. Inside the ship, the system does not wait for certainty before reacting. The moment something appears out of pattern, even briefly, it enters a chain of verification designed to catch exactly this kind of anomaly. The radar operator flags the flicker, not as a confirmed threat, but as something that does not fit the current picture. That information moves quickly, past through the watch supervisor and into the combat information center, where multiple feeds begin to cross-check the same moment. From above, surveillance data is reviewed for any matching movement. Signal analysis searches for unusual emissions. Navigation systems reevaluate nearby contacts, comparing speed, direction, and behavior against expected civilian traffic. What seems like nothing at first is tested against everything the ship can see. This is how the system protects itself, not by assuming the worst, but by refusing to ignore the smallest inconsistency. Every layer is designed to buy time, to reduce uncertainty, and to give the crew enough clarity to act before a situation develops further. But that protection depends on one critical factor: how fast the crew can recognize that something is wrong and respond. The system can process data instantly, but the decision to escalate always begins with a human response. And in a moment like this, that response is already under pressure. Inside the Combat Information Center, the situation does not explode all at once, it tightens. What began as a single flicker is now treated as a possible pattern. And once a pattern is suspected, the tempo changes immediately. Multiple systems begin focusing on the same sector. Radar narrows its sweep, concentrating energy into a smaller area. Electronic surveillance shifts priority, searching for signals that would normally disappear into background noise. At the same time, available aerial assets are redirected to provide a second layer of observation from above. From the outside, nothing looks different. The sea remains calm, nearby traffic continues its course, and no visible threat has appeared. But inside the system, pressure is building with every second that passes without a clear answer. Then the picture shifts again. A second anomaly appears, not identical, but close enough to reinforce the first. Now it is no longer a single unknown. It is a pattern beginning to form. The response escalates immediately. Weapons are not fired yet, but they move closer to readiness. Engagement solutions begin forming in the background, calculating possible intercept paths before a target is fully confirmed. This is how modern naval warfare operates, preparing for action before certainty exists. But preparation creates its own risk. Act too early and the system exposes itself, revealing capabilities to anything watching. Act too late and the ship reacts on the enemy's timeline. That balance is where fatigue becomes critical. A fully alert crew might recognize the pattern and escalate without hesitation, but under exhaustion, the process slows just enough to introduce doubt. One more check, one more confirmation, one more second. And in this kind of situation, 1 second is all it takes to lose control of the timeline. What happened in that moment was not a system failure, and it was not a technical limitation. The destroyer still had every advantage on paper: advanced sensors, layered defenses, and the ability to respond faster than almost anything it might face at sea. But this situation revealed something more important. Modern warships are no longer defined only by the strength of their systems. They are defined by the people operating them, and more specifically, by how well those people can function under continuous pressure over time. Fatigue does not destroy capability all at once. It erodes it slowly. It turns clear signals into uncertain ones. It stretches reaction time just enough to create gaps that should not exist. And in an environment where threats move at high speed and decisions must be made instantly, those gaps become the real vulnerability. This is why what looks like downtime on a warship is never just rest. It is part of the system that keeps the ship operational. Rotation schedules, brief moments off duty, even small activities that seem unrelated to combat, all of it exists for one reason: to keep the crew functioning at the level the system requires. Because once that balance starts to break, the entire structure begins to weaken from the inside. And that raises a much larger question. If the most advanced warships in the world can be pushed to the edge, not by enemy fire, but by the limits of human endurance, then what really defines strength on the modern battlefield?